Welcome back, listener. You are listening to the Friday Council, your home for free thought and purposeful discussion on our human condition and all interesting aspects of modern living. If you share in our desire for new ideas and self-improvement, relax your body and contemplate alongside us. Now on the Friday Council.
Welcome back to the Friday Council podcast. Today is episode 27. Daniel.
Me.
It's Friday, end of the working week. How's it going?
Good, man. Good, man. I've been reflecting.
Nice.
On a meta aspect of my life in that. Oh, how are you, David, by the way?
Yes.
I've been better. There's something wrong with my brain this week.
But plus gin, you'll be sweet. I was just thinking, I listen to a lot of podcasts, as we all probably do, and a lot of people do these days, especially young men, and a lot of the podcast topics bleed over into some sort of self-help vibe, as also a lot of young men subscribe to. And I was just thinking, like, we're at episode 27 now, between the three of us on paper, it sounds like we have all the answers. We ourselves understand how to get the perfect life, but executing on those ideas and specifically executing on self-help topics and ideas is much harder than maybe you'd expect.
Yep.
Specifically the execution of them. And I think it's kind of a issue in itself for people who enjoy self-help content. Just kick us off, I was thinking about it as a junkie would approach a drug, where it's kind of a form of escape, and you stay on the learning treadmill wheel thing, and actually executing on things is kind of uncomfortable. So you just stick to consuming more and more content, and generally it doesn't have to be podcasts or self-help, but just generally having the attitude, like a lot of young people do now, I think, of absorbing like as much information as you can from the internet, just using it as a source of learning across any topics, really puts you in like a state of overwhelm, I think, is one of the reasons anyway. But what are you guys' thoughts of that ramble?
Yeah, I mean, self-help is a umbrella of, many subtopics. For example, like waking up early and getting a start on the day, or I guess you could talk about like health and fitness or dieting, and there's so many different facets to self-help, and I think for most people we all just want one clear-cut answer, but we live different lives, so different lives. Some might, for example, I talk about the 5 a.m. wake up club or whatever it's called, that book. It's not easy for everyone because we have different time schedules. Dieting and health. Some people have underlying health conditions that will affect the way they lose weight or gain weight. And so there's certain, trends that I see in certain books. Mainly for me, I'm more focused on, in the recent times, it's more like financial side. So there will be nuggets of information, but there's no clear-cut answer. So it's kind of like how you apply that to your own life really makes the difference. But then, for me, I guess, there's such an abundance of information out there, then it's almost like information overload. What do I take as truth, or what is the truth? What will work best for me? And then, it's like a fad. You start trying one thing that doesn't work, move on to the next thing. So it's like, how much time do we have to give ourselves to actually try and implement this self-help into our lives? That's what I think from what you've just brought up from the get-go.
That's good. I got a few points off that, but David?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's, accurate. And I think it's just most of it requires so much more time than people are willing to commit. Like, they think that they should be able to pick up a new skill or whatever real quick, but it's probably going to take years, certainly months, to pick up a new skill, whatever that is, a business skill. and you're probably going to have lots of failure on the way. So I think, it's just, for the most part, it's really hard, and it's not fun doing hard stuff.
Yeah. I agree. I think that the time aspect, when you have we've mentioned it before, as you get older and more responsibilities show up, your time gets a bit squeezed. And but it's still, I do believe that it's still an excuse when someone says they don't have time for something. It's just, it's not comfortable. And
I was just going to say, time is one of those things as well. On the one hand, society is teaching us that you need to be more productive with your time, and there's no excuses to what you need to do. But then, in some aspects, we need to sleep more, and so that is a big chunk of time. You think about, it's technically like a third of your lifetime sleeping. But then, if you don't get the right amount of sleep, then your energy drops, makes said tasks or productive things you want to do even harder to do. So it's kind of like you get stuck in cycles, or at least that's from my perspective. Whereas if I have certain I guess things that I want to learn or achieve, you might be able to focus short amounts of time, or let's say 2 weeks, for example, I'll be real focused on doing this, and then something else lags. And so I guess it's like trying to find that balance of, am I just putting too much on my plate, or can I actually achieve it? Unless, like you say, when you add family, if you have kids, or you've got a spouse or partner or pets, like just throws so much into life. It's hard to keep up.
Make the point of maybe potentially not pushing the blame off myself a little bit more, which maybe not a great thing, but with the attitude towards internet that I know we all share, where it's like this gold mine of endless information. Sometimes that enjoyment, we have real enthusiasm for learning, all of us online, but that can be a self-own in the fact that we all have so many interests, and you can satisfy all of them as they increase and decrease. As you get sick of one, you can just shoot into another. And I feel like consuming information, all kinds of information so fast, doesn't allow me to think and apply one self-help idea, and like you're saying, specify it just to me, and execute that one before the next topic's been thrown in. I've listened to like 5 podcasts during the day, all completely different topics, all different interests, and there's no way. Well, there is a way, but it's much more difficult then to get any kind of personal value from each one, and applying it to your own personal life. Because otherwise, you're right, it's all like super broad. It's not really applicable unless you think about it.
So I think the key is that you have to be willing to sacrifice. So that's it. You can't have everything. You've got to essentially hone in on 1 or 2 at most things, and that's going to require sacrificing, at least temporarily, doesn't have to be forever, whether that be interests, hobbies, whatever, because that's it. That's the key. And the best example of it I can give is Conor McGregor. I've seen heaps of videos. I mean, we all roughly know his story, but I've seen lots of interviews where he said that I know nothing. Again, this is old. I think this has changed now. But when he was up and coming, he said, I don't know anything but fighting. When you're like, thinking about all the stuff I'm thinking about, all these different combinations, just constantly, all day, every day, the only thing he's thinking about is fighting. And that's why he was so successful, is because he's just honed in on that one thing. And I think that's arguably why he's not so good anymore. That, and probably age and injuries as well. But now you see, like, he's doing a whole lot of, he does a whole lot of partying, and he's like got alcohol brands, clothing brands, a whole lot of side hustles now. So he's probably nowhere near as focused and committed to fighting as he once was. So I think that's really the key, is just hone in on one thing, and that requires sacrifice.
The issue that comes to mind is that our love for the learning is also our enjoyment. So it's like, where does the line between because I enjoy listening to self-help content, so then it's like the line between entertainment and a lesson or learning something is blurred. So then it's like, okay, I'll focus on just this one thing, but then I'll just listen to this philosophy podcast just for fun. But then there's also lessons to be gleaned from those ones as well, and it gets real messy. So yeah, probably just being more clear. This is my own self-help podcast. So like, you're right. Like focusing on one. Do you reckon one topic's good enough, or even just one?
I mean, yeah, you can go as like pigeonhole as you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on who you are as a person. Like I personally, if I look at my Spotify play, like I'll have I guess, or name drop some of them. Like you've got like the Diary of a CEO, which is quite popular. You'll have Joe Rogan Experience, like Lex Friedman. Yeah. Those are, I guess, your main, and then maybe you might add like Andrew Huberman. But then I also have random things like occasionally I like to listen to stand-up comedy, which some people think might be stupid. It's like we just have different interests. So I think that in itself when I consume, I have the luxury, not everyone has that luxury, of when I work, I can listen to these podcasts at work. So like there's extra time there. But I guess if it's someone who I guess works in like a 9-to-5 job, who's got, there's only so many hours in a day. So if you break that down, for example, say you wake up 7 o'clock, go to the gym, start work at 9, you're in a job 9 to 5, drive home, traffic or whatever, dinner. Yeah, you've only got so many hours to work on what you want to do. So I think, what David's saying is right. You kind of need to apply, or I don't know, put your eggs in one basket. So you really figure out what it is you want to achieve, or what is the most important thing to you, and then probably hone in on that, because you can give yourself a number of different tasks or goals or whatever you want to achieve in a year, and then you come to the end of the year and you think, man, I wish I'd had more time. But you could have most likely worked super hard on one thing, aced it, gotten real good. Let's say it's learning a language. You can learn by doing 20 minutes a night, or you could do 2 hours a night if you're really that focused, and then move on to the next thing. I think you just gotta really make those sacrifices.
I like the just what you said right at the start. It's giving me ideas how a lot of the lessons in the self-help topics are broad, and they can never, even if they wanted to, they can never apply specifically to your life and give you a real clear answer. I think it takes a little bit of creativity to be able to glean something of value from that for you specifically. You have to be kind of creative with the lesson to be able to apply it to your specific situation. I feel like when we are listening to and absorbing so much content, I think creativity comes from silence or focus. So it's just focus and often shower thoughts when you're doing nothing, or not being bombarded with any content. That's when creativity comes. So I think trying to be a bit more creative and focusing, meditating on one of the lessons at a time is probably a good idea.
I think a lot of self-help is stupid as well. It's just personal. It's personal anecdote. So the idea that you mentioned, 5 a.m. club, that would never work for me because I'm not a morning person. There's plenty of people. Elon Musk, off the top of my head, is a guy that I know stays up all night. He still sleeps, but he's a night owl. That's just one person. There's a million other successful night owls out there. So 5 a.m. club worked for one dude that fit his natural circadian rhythm. That can work for others, but it won't work for everyone. Cold showers is another one. There's plenty of people out there who are really successful that don't take cold showers. I can't say definitively off the top of my head, but I doubt Elon Musk takes cold showers. He certainly doesn't look like he's super healthy. So that's what I mean. There can be another one is eat healthy and stuff, and that's good advice, just general life advice. But there's another highly successful person, Donald Trump, does he look healthy to you? No, he's clinically obese and apparently just lives off like Diet Coke and KFC or something.
Yeah.
But he's highly successful. I think it's still good advice to be healthy and try and eat healthy, but it's not. It's just, again, there's plenty of drug addicts or at least people who party hard who are successful. So it's just personal anecdotes and people. It's that classic case of, I think, I don't know if survivorship bias is the right term for it, but it's people, what's worked for one individual and they then assume that it therefore will work for everyone. I think it really shows a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah, I think, and that relates kind of almost a bit of a tangent, but I think last podcast you mentioned people's gripe with white people when you have like so much privilege, like, oh, life is easy, if it's kind of like an anecdote on a societal level. You go, oh, it worked for me, I just like got a job and then stayed at that job and saved money, and it doesn't really work exactly, like it's so general, it doesn't work that way. A lot of, I think we've discussed this before, a lot of it can come down to just dumb luck. People invest in the right company at the right time, buy a house at the right time, whatever it is. They weren't really analyzing, they just did something and it paid off, because you can get lucky. So that's a classic one in the investing world, is someone who invested all their money in the Facebook IPO will say, oh, that's the key to investing. Again, now that's a classic case of survivorship bias, because you don't know that you're sitting on Facebook. You might be sitting on the next Yahoo or the next Enron. There's so many companies that go bust all the time. So it's not as just simple as saying, oh yeah, buy this one stock and then just sit on it for your life, because you got lucky. Now you can say that it could have been calculated, like you knew that the company, had a good product, but it's still, it's not a silver bullet. I also think with the self-help community and hobby, almost you could call it, as it stands, it's kind of it's pretty isolating in the fact that it's just usually you listening to a podcast passively, and obviously having other people, friends, to pull each other along. Like you have gym buddies, or like this helps. I would know. I'd for a fact, if I was doing this on my own, wouldn't have done this every single week. Yeah, like there would have been weeks where I just couldn't be bothered, but because there's other people around. So, what role do you guys reckon social ties have in executing things like that? It's going to be highly dependent on who you are. Some will come and say, oh, it's everything. You need that person to have hold you accountable. And then you'll have a Nikola Tesla who was like a recluse and, celibate. And it's just the epitome of not introvert. Whatever it means when recluse is probably the right term. Yeah. Hermit. And so he was arguably actually wasn't highly successful, because there's all that dispute that Edison took his idea, but it was successful in a way. But there'll be people out there who, whether you want to call them massive introverts or just antisocial hermits, whatever, who are successful, and then there'll be the opposite. So it's completely dependent on who you are. Yeah,
like an example, you're saying you have buddies or whatever that string you along or help you can be accountable to. Like, as a personal anecdote, I, like, at the beginning, started exercising, made a commitment with a friend to go together to the gym, but it took me like a week, 2 weeks before I realized that, no, this is actually something I need for myself. Like, it's not trying to blow them off, it's like, it's a good idea to have, and it works for some people, but that for me was a chance for me to get into inside my own head and put the pound the pavement, whatever. It's just like I needed anyway, that mental focus and capacity, like all just on smashing it out. I mean, I guess it depends what the topic is, but like Dave was saying, another one which I think has kind of taken a huge thing at the moment, like cold showers and cold plunges, because like there is some scientific backing behind it. But yeah, like it just doesn't work for everybody. And then I can see myself there. I mean, trying to do that at the moment, but in wintertime, like this, I just don't think it's going to be sustainable.
It's like, scientifically they're good. There's a lot of good things that you can do, but they're not prerequisites for success.
No.
Like what I'm saying. There's a lot of really healthy people out there who will be broke or at least not highly successful in the terms that I think we're talking successful in terms of monetary value or something along those lines and equivalent to that. It could be fame or something. But yeah, and equally there's a lot of unhealthy people who are highly successful and again at a business wealth sense. So those are good things and they can aid you in your journey, but they're not prerequisites.
I remember you mentioning there's like 4 general lessons or 4 general themes from all self-help. Do you remember those? Or at least a couple of them?
I don't know them not off the top of my head, but that's the thing with self-help is that you can argue this both ways, but the fact that they keep having to publish new self-help books and seminars and stuff suggests that it's not really great advice, is it? Because if advice was so good, they don't have to write it once. But I think that is the case. It's all just pretty simple stuff, and it's just constantly repackaged. I don't remember those 4 things.
Well, yeah, but that's a good point you make. It brings to mind that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And like you're saying, where it's got at the end of the day, it's you that decides it. And I think when it's something that's like a personal development, self-development kind of thing, like an attitude or something that you're going to take, you can't, especially for that, you can't be like, oh, I'll change I'll decide to live that way when I know a bit more, or like when I understand it a bit better. And oftentimes, I mean, that's the mental equivalent, I suppose, of making action. Heard a good quote today that what was it? An inch of action is worth a mile of thinking, of thought, or something. I think that's probably holds true.
Yeah.
But as much as
I can agree to that.
Yeah, as much as you say it, doesn't make it any easier. Eh?
Yeah, and so I think, as I say, I'm very honest with myself. So, and I think you clearly are as well. You probably are as well. We probably all are. But I think you said it, Daniel. Like we all essentially know like a bunch of actions that we should and could be taking all the time, and for the most part we're not doing those. So I think it's just I'm radically honest with myself. I think like the last tangible example was when I was talking about starting a YouTube channel or something, and then I posted, someone else had a thing saying like, I want to start 10 blogs or something, and I can relate to that sort of thing. And then you said, you should start blogging, and I was like, I should.
What does it come down to? What does it boil down to?
It's just, analysis paralysis. But I know that's a bullshit excuse, because that's it. I just need to pick one thing, start, and then give it a go. And you can always change at a later date. That's it. That's better than just sitting around for years hoping that one perfect idea will come into my head.
Yeah.
But at least I'm honest with myself. I know that I'm bullshitting myself.
But even then, like if that one perfect idea came into fruition, it's like you
never will.
You wouldn't have had the skills, or like you wouldn't have had the thing to actually execute it properly.
So it's just a bullshit excuse.
So talking about YouTube, like you can film whatever, or make videos, or learn to edit, but if you just thinking about it, and the perfect topic comes up, how are you going to actually put it together? It'll probably come off subpar. You're going to get that crap out of the way.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it that good idea just to say. The thought of, and it kind of comes up occasionally. The thought of being older, not necessarily on a deathbed, but being older, and you see someone else or even a friend that has achieved what you wanted to achieve. Like they start their YouTube channel. You're like, I should have done that. And to be honest, youth is more marketable usually. I mean, there's a growing generation of adults now that are familiar with the internet, but for a while it's been the case that like, you need to be kind of young. Like, if you want to start a band or play music or something, youth helps a lot.
Yeah, I think it helps, but that again can become a bullshit excuse.
True.
Because, and I can name...
the opposite, you're like, you need to be older to do this stuff.
That's a classic excuse that people will use. to bullshit themselves, and it's just most people aren't aware that they're bullshitting themselves. It's just, but that's it. We're all constantly bullshitting ourselves all the time to make ourselves feel better about our current circumstances. But that's a classic one when you start. Yeah, it's copium.
Copium.
That's a classic one when you hear. And again, to pick on my parents, I've heard that with my mum when, you know, she thinks like New Zealand's going to the dogs, and she's like, oh, well, you know, and I'll be like, try and like correct her on something, and she'll be like, oh, don't tell me that I can move overseas, I'm too old to do that. It's like, you're never too old. You could find, it's just a convenient excuse. If you really want to, like, they have a house that they can sell and stuff like that.
Live off your money for a long time.
You'd find a way to do it. She's got, you know, a teaching degree and stuff. She'd be able to pick up some part-time. Yeah, so it's a convenient excuse. And yeah, there's a long list of people who've become very successful late in life. Off the top of my head, Ray Kroc, McDonald's founder. Technically, he actually wasn't, if you've seen that movie, but the one who made McDonald's what it is today. He was in his 50s when he started that. Sam Walton, Walmart founder, was in his 40s when, there's a whole list of people in their 40s, 50s, and probably even way older who have started a business venture or whatever, some sort of venture, and become successful. So it's just a convenient excuse to bullshit yourself and make yourself feel better for not doing something. So yes, when things like starting a band, probably having youth on your side probably is a benefit, but it's not impossible.
No.
And off the top of my head, actually, I don't know.
My point was to do it now.
Do
it right now.
Yeah, it's sage advice. It's sage advice. But that doesn't matter what age you are, because that's the thing. A 50-year-old probably say, "Oh, but now I'm too old." But no, it's still better doing it now than when you're 60.
Yeah. So
no matter what age you are, just do it, and don't. Or if you are going to bullshit yourself, at least be honest with yourself. That's the thing. Just say, it's too hard. I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to carry on living the way I am. But at least I'm honest with myself. I'm not going to use this BS excuse that I'm too old.
Yeah. You'd be like, I just don't really want it that much.
Exactly. That's okay. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Just be really honest with yourself.
Yeah. I suppose there's
it's
kind
too
of
hard.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do it.
Another way that maybe the self-help community is kind of like a drug is that you kind of almost chase the dragon. You get the low-hanging as soon as you get into the community, you get all the low-hanging fruit, which may be very general, but it's maybe more easily applicable to your own life. But then, like a drug, you kind of chase that initial. Oh, this is amazing. There's like a whole community, and everyone's so like positive and. It makes you feel good to be like progressing yourself, but then you kind of, that's what I've kind of come to realize as well, is like you, my job allows me many hours a day, usually, in a car to listen to and consume content, but it's kind of getting to a point where I'm kind of realizing it's like, what if I changed that much? Then, and the aspects of myself that I have changed have actually come from action like this.
Yeah, I think. I hate to just bring up like personal anecdotes, but that's what I know, I guess. When you have like,
it's up to the listener to then apply it to.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, for most of my life, have just been a big excuse person. Yeah. Even like this, I always like when podcasts started becoming a thing. It's like, well, there was once an idea where I thought, okay, maybe I'll start a podcast. If I had started at least trying back when they started taking off, like could be completely different story. But then like David said, you were saying, or both of you actually, there's no better time than to start now. Like it's never too late to begin. But also I think the other problem that I come across is that you just become so. When you get that low hanging fruit and you just like, oh yep, I'm wanting to do this and do this and do this, and it's really hard to actually level up and then I guess take the next step.
Like chasing
I think I think the reason is because usually that next step is not very glamorous. the low hanging fruit. That's it. It's easy to read a book, to read a post, to like a post, whatever it is, to comment on an article. That's easy. Often, or in almost all cases, and actually another great example is Kasky, that rapper who recently came to New Zealand. He's living his dream. He's a rapper. He loves
Definitely
music. Underground, but he says like most of the time there's a whole lot of bullshit behind the scenes, grinding, packaging orders, sending out merch, all that, signing contracts. There's a whole paperwork account, there's a whole lot of BS behind the scenes. So it's not as glamorous as it looks, and that's like pretty much every like dream endeavor. There's only going to be a portion of it that is super fun. There's going to be a whole lot of BS. Monotonous.
Maybe a good example, I went through a phase where I watch on YouTube and there'll be like a day in the life of a 18-year-old that lives in New York or whatever. You start watching and you think, man, this person's got like the most chillest, cruisiest life. They wake up and they can go and get a coffee and then they hang out with their friends. But like to get to where they are to the point that they can record that video and it be monetized, so like you're obviously watching, they're benefiting from clicks and views, and they can sustain that lifestyle. I'm sure behind the scenes there's a whole lot more going down. They're trying to collaborate with other people. You've got to, there's more to it than just watching snippets, and that's, I think, with Instagram as well, that was a huge thing where it's just like the highlights of life, but you don't see what actually happens or goes on behind the scenes. And then I guess for us normal folk, it's like, well, we could have that lifestyle ourselves, but then now we've got to put the effort in, and then it's just like, well, what's the point? Like, it just takes too much time. So maybe we just prescribe what David's saying. Just be honest with yourself. It's like, and
that's fine.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't be that person who's like, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that, and then you come up like, I'm too old, or just be honest and be like, I kind of want to do that, but I'm not 100% sure, and it seems really hard. So I'm comfortable the way. Just be honest with yourself.
I used to have this thought like leaving high school, where it'd be like, what's going to happen in 10 years' time if there were to be a reunion and you see people and what everyone's getting up to? Like, no one wants to be that guy who just took the easy route, became a painter or whatever, and it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong.
Good.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad that was the point.
No, that's the point. It's like there's nothing wrong with that, and you shouldn't be comparing yourself, because, like,
you're right.
In the end, like, life, or your own life, is really what you make of it.
Yeah.
Like, you can look up to people, and you can have people that you admire and inspire, that you find inspiring and you want to be, or not want to be, but who you want to be like. But then they've obviously had different life and sacrifices that they've made. So you've got to really figure out how you can apply all these things we're learning to our own lives, and how we can better ourselves and better our inner circle or your close friends and family, and really, I guess, make it what you want for yourself. I don't know if that's...
No, I agree. Little side point about the Instagram only showing the highlights. I think our generation, roughly thereabouts, have kind of gone through that and had to learn that, although some people may not have really fully learned it yet. I think generationally we've all generationally maybe, we've all kind of had to learn that, because that previous generations didn't have to deal with that highlight reel being shoved in the face, and we have to like consciously kind of integrate. Everyone knows that it's everyone's highlight reel. No one it's not.
I don't know that everyone does. I think most people don't, or they might kind of subconsciously know, but. Or I don't know.
Or everyone on the top service knows.
WWE wrestling. you know that it's not real, but you still like, it still has an emotional effect on you. I think that could be the case for a lot of people. They might have heard, it's just people posting their highlight reels, but if they're feeling shit about themselves, that still like hurts. Seeing like, everyone else is in Bali and living the dream, and I'm
sitting at home in a room
Driving
alone.
Lambos and Bugattis.
Yeah. I think it does do something subconscious. Even for us, it's always saying, if you notice, if we're conscious enough, we'll notice that we're not feeling great. Like if you're seeing, even if it's just FOMO, if you're not like, yeah, you friend, like you go in Bali. If it's just a relative stranger or just an acquaintance from high school, you're like,
Yeah. Well, but that's
that.
again that we talked about this before we started recording. We might have been recording when I said that we all feel envy. So that's it. Of course, if you see, who did I see recently? I won't name drop him, but there's a dude that we went to school with. Nav will probably, or you certainly would know if I said the name. But he's like a professional photographer or into photography.
Yeah, I know you're talking
Yeah. And he's like, I think he's in Bali at the moment, and I think he's been all around the world, and looks like he's living the dream. And sort of see that, it's like, oh, fuck, like this guy's made it. And there's like a hint of envy in me. And say, of course, then I can override that and be like, that's like awesome that this guy's done that. And there was even a thought in my mind, like, I should message him and be like, sup, dude, I live an unconventional life as well. Like, you want to bounce ideas around, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't do that. I shouldn't say, of course, because it should be a normal thing. It should feel comfortable.
Yeah,
because he'd probably be, completely happy to. Talk.
I think you talk about like if you're interested in a particular industry of work or something you want to achieve, there shouldn't be anything stopping you from reaching out or messaging someone who's done that before. It's like a
big thing.
I've had there's been one thing I wanted to try, and I think it was doing like voice work, because for whatever reason I had people tell me that I have like a voice for radio or whatever, and maybe that's why I was like, this is probably the next step, is just starting something which is comfortable with your mates. But I could probably reach out and see someone who's done that before. How do I get into this? Or can you like see if you can connect me with someone? Because what do you have to lose? You're going to be at the same point. If they say no or they ghost you, it's like, well, at least I tried. I put it myself out there.
Are you going to do that?
Not at this stage. I've got too much going on.
But I think if he's honest with himself, it's not because you don't have too much going on. You say it'd be uncomfortable.
It would be very uncomfortable. It would be very uncomfortable.
Or you just don't care that much.
No, I think I do. I think I do. Yeah. I do care. It's more, I don't know if it's a priority at the moment, but that could be an excuse. Because I used to always, have that thing was like, okay, I'll do that when the time comes. I just want to focus on this.
Never will come.
And the time will never come. But then I guess like that was the prime example for me was when I was living at home, and I felt like I just don't have that freedom or whatever to do what I need to do. And then now I've moved out, married. I can't. There's nothing actually stopping me. I can do it.
Yeah,
but
I'm in that exact same boat.
But it's like
it's very convenient excuse. So again, it's a way to bullshit rather than being honest with yourself and say, no, I'm just being a pussy, or I'm just being lazy for not starting this YouTube. It's a convenient excuse. So I don't want to record while my parents are home because they'll hear me. And I don't want to.
Yeah, I think I remember saying a similar thing.
There's a saying that everywhere you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And so what that means, if you don't understand that, is you think that once you get your own house or you go overseas, and that's a big one for people. I've been through that phase. Where it's like, if I move to Auckland, then I'll become like the super self-confident and I'll be running all these businesses. But if I move there, I'll just still be the same person with the same flaws, the same weaknesses that I haven't overcome. So I think it's a very powerful saying, because it is very true. People use that also. If I just get that new job, then I'll be happy. If I just get that new girlfriend, then I'll be happy.
That is fatal, isn't it?
But just going back to that point about reaching out to people, I think that's a great point. I think in a lot of cases, successful people are very happy to, teach you their ways or give you some advice. And it's a classic case of...
It's flattering, isn't it?
I think it's flattering, because I think because essentially they get to talk about themselves, which feels good.
Exactly. Yeah,
but I think
it feeds their ego.
Either way, you're getting a W, you're getting free information.
But that's where I think most people go wrong, is they see successful people, and successful in terms of like they're a successful businessman, they're a successful property investor, oh, that guy's an asshole. He's got all this money. I don't want money anyway. So rather than being like, oh, this guy's done really well for himself, let me see if I can learn something from him. Like, oh, this guy's a douchebag. They make up the story in their mind. They could be the nicest person in the world, but because they've got money, they just make up all these.
Or like the bystander, kind of like similar to the bystander effect, where you're like, oh, I don't want to bother them though. Like, they must.
There could be that as well.
Yeah, that reminded me. I
don't want to be weird.
Saw a relatively, I'd say, New Zealand famous, TikToker on a plane that I was on the weekend. I looked him up. I was like, oh man, I recognize this guy. He had 500,000 followers on TikTok, and I saw him walking down. I was thinking like, should I like have said something to him? But it's like that bystander effect. Like, he's probably like doing his own thing. But honestly, what's the worst like that could happen? It's like, but hey, me and my friends run a podcast. I don't know.
I was going to say, what's the worst that could happen? You could ask him while you're filming, and if he's rude to you, then you get heaps of likes by calling him out online.
Well, not necessarily that, but like his line of videos is that he makes impressions of all facets of like experiences that people like all share. Like for example, one video might be like when you're younger in your mate's house and their parents start fighting, or like, and it's like many people share the same experiences, but it's
Speaking of many people sharing the same experience, we were talking earlier. Like I think a lot of people will be able to relate to the feeling of being a high schooler or living at home still when you're younger and thinking, when I've moved out, I'll do such and such. For me, that was like, what was it? I was practicing singing at home. I didn't want to sing with my parents on because I was like, oh, that's cringe, it's embarrassing. I really need to learn. If I'm gonna like get better, I have to practice, and I never really got round to it. And it's not something I care about really. Like, I've come to terms with that. But again, could be cope. Got to self-analyze that one. But I think a lot of people, if you remember perhaps what you wanted to do in high school, if only when I have more money to spend, or if I'm out of the house, that's a good thing to remember, because I think a lot of people would have had that. And now most of us listening are in that position.
Yeah, I think.
So pull the trigger.
I mean, this might not be related to what you're saying, but I think there often, as I've noticed, as time has gone past, there'll be certain things that become more popular just over time. So for example, like podcasts started becoming a thing, and now how many million podcasts there are in the world, and then like everyone wants to have a piece of that pie. Or I remember like Twitch streaming, like playing games, or even like becoming a professional esports player. It was like, cool, I want to try that. And is it something that we actually want to do, or are we just just doing that because other people are doing it? Like, because even now, as a 27-year-old, I, for the most part, I still don't really know exactly what I want to do with my life. But then, I mean, I brought up the example of trying like voice work or whatever. It's like, I think that would be a cool thing to try and at least give a go at. But I don't know if it's actually what I want to do. But equally, is that just something I hold, or is that?
No, I think that's common, because I think you get these ideas of you think you want to do this, and then you actually try it and you're like, oh, actually that's terrible. In my case,
that's where you learn, right? That's the
so I think
value of executing.
I think so you just have to try shit and see what sticks. I thought that I wanted to be some form of like blogger, writer. And then I started a blog, and I started typing, and like, I don't enjoy writing. I don't enjoy writing. But in my head, it just had this glamorous, idea of like,
was that
being
from,
in a coffee shop.
From like Californication, Hank Moody?
I mean, probably, like
glamorizes those sort of things.
Well,
that's something I wrote down as well. It's directly related to one piece of low-hanging fruit. At the risk of sounding a bit ironic and unaware, maybe some low-hanging fruit that we all got was that the failing can be looked at as a positive thing. There's a real easy, you don't have to do anything. You just have to accept that thought into your head. And like you're saying, it's related to pulling the trigger on some of these things is that you learn. It's fail technically, but you've learnt what you don't want to do, which is a win.
And I think
so. That's real low hanging fruit.
Yeah, it kind of like crosses off. Like this isn't for me.
Yeah, I used to think failure is bad.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to both in my case. I can speak for my case, but I'm guessing probably all of our parenting and school. With school and my parents teach you that failure is bad, and you're scared to ask, especially if you made a mistake. I think a good example at home is say if like. It's a different form of failure, but it's a mistake. Like you drop a glass and it smashes or something. You drop spill something on the couch, and you're too scared to go and tell your parents because you're gonna get ripped a new one. And that's like it's such bad parenting and such bad schooling. That attitude, because then that's it. You internalize that, and I still struggle with that to this day. Where
most people will.
I think scared to ask or scared especially if I've made a mistake, I'm scared to like raise my hand, and then that mistake like compounds in a lot of cases, and so it can come from like a small mistake that would be easy to fix if you just went and asked for help straight away, but you're too scared, and then that spirals out of control until you have a massive problem. So I think that's something that society, and again, it won't just be my parent, I think it'd be very common with parents of our generation.
Well, because they went through the same schooling system.
Yeah, exactly. And this, it all probably ties into like scarcity, poverty, where like, breaking a glass is like the end of the world sort of thing. Leaving a light on at night, it's the end of the world sort of thing, because, it's really, really bad.
And also dedicating like years perhaps to a pursuit that doesn't turn out fruitful would have been devastating back in the day. Like you can't afford to just jack off the equivalent of doing some political science degree, and it didn't get a job. So sorry, mum and dad. Yeah, it's 20 grand gone.
I hope schooling and hope younger parents are getting that better now. Probably still a lot that aren't.
I remember hearing a story about some father who would, it's kind of like an urban myth, ask his daughter or children at the end of the day what they failed at, and applaud. If they had tried something and failed at it, then that would be negative. So trying something.
That's awesome. That's the way it should be taught.
Yeah, it's so foreign though.
It is.
It makes complete sense.
It makes complete sense.
I don't know anyone who's ever done that.
And I agree, and it's such a shame because that is the right way. And I've internalized that so much that that's the way I used to think about when I was first out of high school and wanting to get a job. I thought you had to be an expert in the job before you could get the job. I'm like, and I still, even to this day, it's hard, this idea of that you go to a job and you get taught how to do the job, and I'm like, you get paid when you don't know what you're doing, and like that's such a foreign concept because that's such an internalized thing for me, this idea that you cannot make mistakes, you have to know.
I think it's kind of built into the system actually, because I think another quite relatable thing after leaving high school or university, going for jobs, is that a lot of the jobs you want do require, say they require experience, but you don't, I know
what you mean. I know what you mean, but there's still,
it's somewhat baked into the system, but I know what you mean.
There's still a lot of jobs out there that you can get that don't require, even like going to McDonald's, like idea of I would be like thinking, I need to like know how to flip the burger before I actually do the job. It just, it's such a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, that's a good example, because I had the same thought. Like, I remember doing a paper at uni on accounting, and someone I knew who had already had an accounting degree was working in a firm, and I was like asking for help, like how do I do this? And then he explained to me, he's like, even like I don't know how to do this, but I can ask like the guy I'm working under. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like you've already got the job. You're working for this firm. And he's like, no, like when I start here, you get like a month or like 2 months of where you work underneath someone who's got the experience, and you can ask them whatever. There's no dumb questions. Like it's basically like a free pass to learn and to gain that experience. And I'm like, man, that sounds it's pretty cool. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
but
any good work environment.
But from a business perspective, you can understand why that can be quite difficult to implement, especially if it's a small business, because it's like you don't have that luxury of spending the money on wages or salary for someone who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, the incentive is definitely to shrink that period of time as small as possible. So you want to teach them just enough to do the job, and then they can slowly learn themselves. I think like retail is it's very hyper efficient, so it's nailed that down to an art almost, where it's very what's the word, uniform. Like it's the same for every worker. You get there's no real in my retail. There's no real learning period. You just kind of thrown in, and you naturally will ghost someone. But yeah,
you get through. Well, I worked
in a more career-focused job, I think it's still, if you get a month or so, it's dedicated like special time for that. But in a hyper-efficient retail job, I think that's been squeezed, pinched right down.
Yeah, for the most part, it's kind of, most of them are the same. Yeah. There'll be small different things that different stores or whatever do different processes differently, but yeah, it's
So I think that fear of failure. That's what I think. If it's going to be putting yourself out there socially, I think it does come down to fear, and then perhaps the instilled fear of failure from schooling and maybe traditional parenting, and not recognizing that failure is actually success in a way, in a personal development kind of way. Bleeds over into that, where it stops you from obviously does stop you from taking action. And it might be more ingrained than any of us even realize. Yeah. So like that was probably one of the reasons why you may not have started a YouTube channel before, or maybe me for singing or playing music.
This is the first time I've heard you say that you like to sing.
I think
who doesn't like to sing?
When it comes to like putting yourself in front of an audience, that's also, I think, just a natural human instinct. Yeah. Because that ties in, obviously, very primitive. Like, if you get ostracized from the group, then you're screwed. You know, when we're living in caves. So that's not necessarily a parenting or schooling thing. That is an inbuilt. I'm thinking more of like tangible things like making a mistake on a test or
Well, I think that probably, because I don't think there's any large conspiracy against with the schooling system like that. I think it probably came from that originally, where it was a human instinct plus scarcity, 100 or 200 years ago when these teaching methods are being formed, and it just kind of bled over. It doesn't quite match up to this day and age where you can just go off and study for 3 years and if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul, and it doesn't. Starting a YouTube channel, that fear doesn't serve.
So, I mean, do you think there is a culture of like not being able to ask for help?
Yeah, definitely.
Because just while you're talking, this is kind of unrelated, but when I was on holiday, it's a dumb thing now that I think about it in hindsight, but there was that the thought that I needed to know where I was where I was going. It's like, I've got my phone, I can look up this, whatever. Whereas in reality, I could have asked the bus driver, like, "Hey, does this take me to the place like I need to go?" And he'd be like, "No," or "Yes, I'll tell you where to get off." But it's like, "Oh no, I just had the thought, oh man, I need to do this all myself."
Well, isn't that the reason for the whole top-down men's mental health movement? It's okay to ask for help and all that.
Yeah,
I think it has to be. I think you're right. There is a culture of it, and it has to be consciously broken. Yeah, and I think that's what we've seen with, especially New Zealand, with the men's mental health.
Yeah, I think we're only scratching the surface though, because even though it's out there, you see the ads on TV and stuff. Yeah, it's still so deeply embedded in men. Yeah, so many men that it's only the tip of the iceberg. It's like you hear about these things, but would you call one of those helplines? I don't think I would.
No,
because I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Yeah. It's like the Instagram thing as well, where it's like, on the surface, we know it's good to talk about our feelings and it's good to ask for help. Like, and it just as like Instagram, we know that it's a highlight reel, but yet it's still
I often see those ads come up, and not I don't need like the suicide helplines, but you see some of them are just for just yarn sort of thing. I'm like, there's probably I could probably get some benefit out of that, like just firing my thoughts out. But then I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm like, it doesn't feel right.
Saying. You can probably apply that to a similar thing as like the many food banks or whatever that there are. Like if you're struggling, I shouldn't say that for everybody, but it would for me. Like if I got to that point, it would be so hard for me. I think it's a pride thing.
Yeah, pride.
I just can't, like, I couldn't do it. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And that's why there's these services there to, like, help people.
And like we also said, people love being asked to help, and that's another low-hanging fruit. Like a psychology tip is you naturally, intuitively will think that asking someone to do something for you is like a pain for them.
Yeah,
but
that's
statistically, scientifically, it's better. It helps you make friends. If you want to make friends, ask them to do something for you. It's a win-win. You get something, and they love to help. People love to help each other.
You're right, and that ties back into like what Nav was saying. Like that bus driver would probably feel honoured, like, oh, I'm helping out a tourist. And I think I remember when we talked to a cop in LA.
That's right. Yeah, at the train station.
So like that's it. They often that in most cases, they're going to be happy whether it feels like they're helping or just breaking up the monotony of their day. But there's something so deeply embedded. I can only speak for myself, but this idea of like it's not it's not okay. I have to do everything myself. That's deeply ingrained in me.
For me too. I like sometimes even like making a phone call that would be like a 2-minute thing. It was like I'm sitting there. Hey, what am I going to say? Like rehearse. Got to rehearse what I got to say. Like, it's just dumb. Where you just need to kind of get over that hump and just.
I think this ties back in though with and it's both schooling and parenting, this idea to say like I never
just culture in general, our culture in general.
Culture in general, but I mean there's some people who would have had, because I mean you see these people, I think it is all starting to make sense, like some of it will be genetic, but there's people who what do they call it, like secure attachment type. I don't know if that's in that sort of field, but that all stems from being raised a certain way. So I say like all these, it's starting to make sense to me how you're like the childhood that you have, even though if it was seemingly happy, like there was always food on the table, you had friends, and nothing, you always seemed happy. These sort of deeper emotional lessons, I'm seeing how they were missing in my childhood, and how that really plays a factor in adulthood.
Right, yeah, I agree. All you're being reprimanded for certain things in certain ways is ingrained.
It's really bad. It's really bad.
I think we should also take a moment or be conscious of the fact, or grateful rather, for the fact that need, that desire and joy for helping other people seems to be as deeply ingrained as that fear of standing out from the crowd and doing something in front of people. I think we've got to be grateful for that is also super deep, and no one's going to say they don't like helping other people if they can offer,
Yeah.
So that's kind of, that might be, does that change you guys' view on the value of social interactions and executing some of these self-help things? If it's in reference to wanting to help each other? Yeah,
it's like you can logically recognize that, but I say when you've had a lifetime worth of whatever nature, it's not nurture. It's not impossible to overcome. Don't get me wrong, but it's a very slow process. So I'm at the very start of the journey of overcoming a lot of these deeply unhealthy thoughts, thought patterns, whatever coping mechanisms that I have.
I mean, you would think like maybe topical now, but for me, if you have a puppy, for example, if you train them early, it makes it a lot easier to follow. Example. But if they get past that developmental stage, it becomes a lot harder to train them to do whatever. So when you've lived a life of I can't do this, or this is I can't ask my parents for help, or I think this is one thing that stood out for me. I remember asking my mum once for a ride to the bus stop because I wanted to hang out. It's like 15-20 minute walk. Like she could have just been like, she's like, no, I'm busy. If you want to go out, you go do it yourself. And it's like, well, they like ingrained it in culture. It's like, well, I'm not gonna ask anymore. So then naturally over time, like looking back on it, it's like, well, I wouldn't go to my mum for things because of that. I guess you not call it a life-changing event, but in reality it is a life-changing event. And then so you become closed off, and now we all start ripping out our
I mean,
at our parents. But
it's not intentional.
They're not
I
perfect.
can recognise that.
We won't be either.
No, of course.
I'll be the first to admit that I'm a very flawed human.
Yes.
But I think at least I'm very open with that. Whereas I don't think that and most people aren't. Most people aren't. They're very flawed, but they're very like defensive about their flaws. Rather than like, I know that. I have a tendency to behave in a certain way.
I think that's probably the main predictor if someone is into the self-help content is that you are open and you're
missing.
Yeah, or you're open, I think, and you're willing to learn and change.
Yeah,
I think it's going to naturally attract.
I think so, but
like pull you towards.
I also think like it's a form of. And I who did I see? Someone posted it. There was someone where it came up on Instagram. I think with some prominent person where they're talking about like self-help, but it's because there's so many people that it's like a form of parenting. It's seeking like it's the parents that you never had.
Honestly, I felt that.
And I think like Jordan Peterson often is the classic example of that. It's the father,
his daddy,
father of self-help.
The father that so many young men never had.
That's the beauty of the internet. You can choose a father you never had.
But I also think
a pick. Andrew Tate.
There's an openness to learn. But I also think that if you look at the people who gravitate towards self-help, won't be all, but I think a higher than average portion of the population, you'd say that mental illness, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, because that's it. You're looking for something. But I think if you had the perfect childhood where you were, an abundance of love and help and all, you were allowed to be comfortable to do all these things, I think that's your default mode. So you don't,
It's possible. It's possible. Although I think could be a example of that exact thing where, sure, there's stuff that and certain things are reprimanded for. They'll be real deep seated, but pretty like uncomplainable childhood. Pretty great.
But and again, I can't speak for myself, but it's the way I used to think about uncomplainable because as I say, I always hear these things that your childhood, it explains like why you have the anxieties and self-doubt, all these things. And I'm like, but I look at my childhood and I was so happy. But I think it's that surface level happiness. Oh, we've got new Yu-Gi-Oh cards, new Dragon Ball Z cards. Oh, we go to Laser Strike. But where were these deep and meaningful conversations? They were missing.
That's true.
So again, I can't speak for you, but that's right. I'm only just starting to understand, and we've even talked about like. I think might have been for all of us, or at least for me, that never get things that you really should be taught by your parents, like things about sex.
Very considerate.
I mean, it's kind of crazy that your parents, like, if having parents that don't, like, sex was never mentioned. It's kind of like a pretty pivotal part of humanity, and just
similar boat to you. It's like the nature of what I was taught about sex is if you're gonna do it, then at least wrap it up. Like that's what it, like. There's no more. There wasn't more to understanding how it worked, or like
I didn't have that. It was nothing.
Or like
no conversation.
I had
conservative parents, but like because really men and women are completely different. Like the way you operate and the way like emotionally. And I just want to touch quickly back because you were talking about like the self-help movement. Statistically, I don't have them in front of me, but its majority are young men from 18 to 35, or that's probably a bit broad, but where it's just there was that lacking, or when you're younger, like
I think again, it won't be all. There'll be people who had their perfect childhoods, and they might have the opposite issue where they're over what's it, mollycoddled or whatever I think is a term for it, where they might have helicopter parents. They were too overbearing, too much love. They had no independence, and now they're suffering from that. And then there'll be an array of people who just seemingly had normal. But I think that's the key. I wasn't saying all, but relative to that population, I think you would, if you looked at people who gravitate towards Tony Robbins seminars, there'll be the overweight relative to the average population of depression, anxiety.
You reckon?
definitely. And have you not seen like the people? Again, it's not all, but have you not? There's people who are like
I know you're just saying majority. But
this far away from suicide.
Yeah, right.
At his seminars, because that's it. And it's not all, and it might not even be average. If we like whatever, I don't know what the average like depression rate in the population is, but it'll be a small figure. It's like might be like a quarter, like 25%.
Yeah, okay, right.
So I'm saying like you might look at a Tony Robbins seminar, it might be like 40%.
Yeah.
So it's overweight relative to the general population. There's still it might not be that 99% of them are depressed. It's just there's more than average. I think.
Okay, cool. Perhaps if we're going to be wrapping up, any more low-hanging fruits that you guys can, speaking of self-help, I like the failure as a success is pretty fundamental in life. And obviously, maybe I didn't quite realize how possibly deep the fear of failure went. So like just forcing yourself to think about that and reminding yourself, it really helps. You can kind of ingrain it just by like repeating it or and thinking that if you come up, you want to do something and you're like, no, that's too scary. Like, if you're honest with yourself, it's too scary. Like, I don't want to be embarrassed in front of other people. And you go, it's an opportunity to fail. Like I said before, this podcast is an opportunity to fail every week, basically, but also meta the whole thing. It's a win no matter what. When you look at it that way, it's not so scary.
Yeah, it's just I think you're 100% right. It's just it's still when your default mode is it's very hard to overcome. It's not impossible, and I say it's a BS excuse. But I'll be honest with myself. Yeah, it's right. What uploading a video on YouTube? What's the worst that can happen? You know?
Yeah.
For me, I don't even have like a job to lose if I post something controversial.
Do you guys have anything that comes to mind when you think of like any low-hanging fruit that you really live by and rate now? Just attitudes.
I think my big one.
Or cold showers.
Yeah. My big one, and don't get me wrong, because you can bounce back, oh, you're just complaining. I would say don't complain. It's healthy to vent and to express whatever your grievance is, but then don't dwell on them. Accept the way things are, rather than being like, oh, I'm fucked because of my childhood. It's like, no, it is the way it is, but I have the power to change that now, and whatever your circumstances are within reason. Obviously, if you're terminal cancer, it might not work out, but you still hear those stories about people who get like dealt a terrible blow, and then that gives them the freedom because that's it, because everything gets put in perspective. I think just don't complain about your circumstances. So a common one in our society is people think they deserve or want a better paying job, better working conditions, but what are you doing to put yourself out there to get a better job? That's it. Most people, they'd want it handed to them. They're waiting for someone to come to them about, hey, I've got this sweet job offer for you, or this promotion. Go and ask for the promotion. Go start applying for new jobs. Don't complain about your circumstances. If you think you deserve better, create that reality for yourself.
Yep, that's pretty mainstream as well, is the be proactive about your promotions and pay rises. That's pretty mainstream. Like it's not executed a lot. But it's an attitude that everyone knows.
I know a handful of people who are a bit like that, where it's like,
what they're real for it, or they
think, oh, I deserve this. I've got the, someone who's doing this role in another job will be paid this, but I'm only being paid this.
Yeah, but do nothing about it.
You can apply for another job if you're that way inclined. But it's like, anyway.
Anyone for you comes to mind, Dev?
I didn't really go on about it that much, but I think you go back to like the basics. So, for example, exercise and sleep, probably like super important.
Sleep.
Like, you could be the busiest person, whatever, wanting to do this and do this and do this, but you should probably always make time to exercise. Like it's a game changer. Like it can just kind of reset you. I've found I'd be feeling anxious, or I've got this coming up, or I've got when I was applying for jobs, it's like, oh man, this is real stressful. But at least putting in that time to like just getting physical or whatever. It's like you
Like
need that.
venting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep. I mean,
Speaks for itself,
that's an
doesn't it?
important one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always I would love to get 8 hours of sleep a night at least.
Oh, this new puppy.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of that's also my own undoing. We're just trying to pack my day, and before you know it, it's late. You know, you're just chasing. It's like chasing the dragon. You're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'll sleep in the weekend and I'll have a sleep in, but you just can't.
That is a common self-own and self-help community. It's like the 24/7 hustling at the expense of your sleep. Like some of them will actively advocate for like
I think
sleeping 4 hours. Just like you got to
terrible
Terrible thing.
advice. I think if you look at most people who are actually successful, sleep will be integral, especially like athletes, because it's just such an important part for.
It's unarguable.
Yeah, there is and rounded to a round number, it's 0 of the portion of the population who can function on, I forget the exact number, but less than 6 hours of sleep or something. The people,
you might be able to do it occasionally, but long term it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So,
the vast majority of population needs on average 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
So that would be mine. It would be eat, I didn't mention eat, like diet is probably super important. Eating the right foods, not just junk, because that affects your body. So eat, sleep, and exercise is probably the core, and then everything else, cold showers, whatever.
I think that's good, well-rounded advice. Friday Council, low-hanging fruit, low-hanging self-help fruits. To wrap it up, so you, the basics: health, physical, sleep, food, exercise. It's not rocket science. Everyone can figure that out. Failure is actually a W, is a success every time.
Don't complain.
No complaining. It's pretty good.
Or
very
little,
well-rounded.
very little. At least follow the 80-20 rule.
To complaining.
Yeah, complain. I think it's way too much. But at worst, complain 20% and 80% own your shit.
Fair.
Yeah.
You're giving them some leeway.
A lot of leeway.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up there. That's another episode in the bag. Episode 27. Well, it was fun being counselled.
Yeah, it felt very therapeutic again, like last episode.
But we'll see you for the next episode. Peace out, everyone.
Peace out. Bye.
Peace.